So let's get started. We'll let anyone trickle in here as we go. So we're recording and all set up. So first off, Kay, thanks for taking the time. This is going to be one I've been looking forward to for a long time because I will start with a personal story, which is so fun to look back on right now as we all come together right now. So almost to the day a year ago, where I could even pull up the exact date. I think it had to be around the 22nd or 23rd of January.
Yeah.
Where in New York City last year, this feels like an entire world ago, the Khe hosted a Rad Reads meetup in the basement of a very cool bar in, what was that, Soho? Chelsea? It was in Chelsea.
Meatpacking.
Yeah, exactly. So here I am. I am 2 weeks into writing a weekly newsletter. And part of the original announcement, or not announcement, but resources that I dug into was an article from Kay of how to start a newsletter. And it was very simple. Use this platform, pick 5 things, and you told the story of how your original newsletters was just 5 links in a Gmail. And so my originals were 3 links in. I started on review just because I did some vetting and saw that one was the best one. And I still remember sending that and saying, okay, here I am. I'm just going to start doing this thing. I came into the year saying I was so sick of consuming for the sake of consuming. There needs to be something else, some kind of forcing function, some kind of better thing. And then at the Rad Reads happy hour, I was talking to Kay and I said, what advice do you have for someone who is just starting out writing or anything like that? And he said, do it for a year. That's all you need to commit to. Do it for a year. It doesn't matter if anyone reads it. It doesn't matter whatever happens in a year. Worst case, no one's reading it and you've done something that you were going to do anyway. And best case, it will change your life. And here we are 54 weeks later, and I'm giving an office hours to a writing community based on this habit. So I think it's truly, it gives me chills to say that out loud because of it all coming full circle in a year. So that's my first thank you to Kay for your advice back then.
Dude, you showed up. And yeah, I want to find that tweet because there's a picture of it floating around on Twitter. But it was like 85 people. It was loud. Everyone's like hugging and talking like really close. Like I think I was like yelling into your ear because it was so crowded. I'm like, make it to a year, yes. My germs all up in your face. Yeah, what a difference a year makes. And look at us all now.
And here we are on Zoom instead of, we definitely would have done that again. And I could have had a Ship 30 for 30 meetup in New York, which would have been so cool.
As soon as we're all vaccinated, there's like these Rad Reads groups are just gonna fire up across the world. Like I could feel the pent up energy already.
Yep. So here it is. I just looked up your tweet. NYCers, join our happy hour tonight, Tuesday at 6. DM for deets. This was January 7th, 2020. Yeah, and wow. Just like that, so that was 1 weekend because I wrote that was probably on a Thursday. And I'd written my newsletter on that Sunday, 4 days before. So cool to see. Awesome. And that's where I'd love to start with. You obviously, I'll say, have one of the more interesting paths to being an online creator, I think, of anyone. It's I've heard it multiple times, but if you want to give kind of the TLDR background of what got you into the position you're in now, and then from there I'd love to just dig into similar advice you gave to me to start for this community of readers or writers all at the beginning of their journey.
Amazing. Well, Dickie, thank you. You also didn't mention we both worked at BlackRock. Do you still work at BlackRock?
Yeah, still do.
They're cool with all the media doesn't come at you for
I don't really put media policy. I don't put that anywhere. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Things have probably changed since I was blogging anonymously when I worked at BlackRock. Yeah. But All right, cool. Well, let's kick in. First of all, thank you all. I know Zoom fatigue is real, so for you all to be on this, to see some of my homies. I even saw Connie. She's my breathwork coach. She's the bomb. Highly recommend working with her. So I guess the TLDR is that I'd start with a quote that my dad gave me. He's a Cambodian immigrant to the U.S. 1973. I was born in '79. And he always told me growing up, he said, we're not the smartest, but we're the hardest working. And so, you know, as I tell you my story of being a creator, we can talk about Wall Street, we can talk about whatever you want. The truth is, like, I never really know what I'm doing, but I do it, I show up. And so we can talk about newsletters, we could talk about blogging, we could talk about coaching, we could talk about online courses. I'd never had a playbook for any of this stuff. If you asked me when I left BlackRock 6 years ago, if I'd be, you know, creating a methodology around a productivity system and then selling it to 400 people in the world, I'd be like, you're out of your fucking mind. But the thing, you know, true to my dad's words, and there's some problems with that little aphorism that he shared with me, but a lot of where I've gotten to has been by just showing up. And so I think Rad Reads is approaching like its 289th issue. I think I've actually given myself permission to take a lot more breaks, but I don't think I took a break for the first 200 issues, spanning the birth of 2 kids, a move, 2 trips around the world, lots of broken internet in Bali and other places like that. But you know, I just, to me, the differentiator is not how skilled you are, but it's your willingness to show up and then take the feedback loops and the learnings and then to pivot and adjust quickly. So I don't know if that's like the background that you wanted, but yeah, I worked on Wall Street for 14 years and I've been a creator for 6 years. I write the Rad Reads blog and newsletter. I teach the course Supercharge Your Productivity, and the business side of my content, I was going to say empire, but content cottage is a mix of online teaching, mostly online teaching now, but it's spanned coaching, public speaking, Patreon. I think I've made like $70,000 on Patreon over the 6-year period, which I'm basically winding that down, and a little tiny bit of sponsorships and affiliates.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things you said resonated heavily with me. Is one, I don't think anyone knows what they're doing, and that is one of my biggest takeaways from starting this community and working on all this is everyone's pretty much making it up as they go. And the second you realize that, I think is the key to one thing I'd love to dig into with you is imposter syndrome, especially as in the early stages of writing. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple fundamental fears that I think you preach about overcoming. And it's how do I say something if I don't think anyone's going to listen? Or what should I say if I think people will make fun of me or anything like that? Like getting over those initial fears. Any thoughts you have on that, I think would be super valuable.
Yeah, I still got the imposter syndrome loud and clear, front and center. In fact, I was just emailing with one of my students yesterday, and he's like, I'm pumped to take the course. And he's like, how are you feeling? It's like imposter syndrome reigns supreme. And I think, you know, that there's this really, let's just get straight to the heart of it, right? The heart of it for me, at least, and I know this relates with a lot of other people, is that a big sense of my self-worth is derived from what I accomplish. And so if I don't feel like I'm accomplishing something, then I feel shitty about myself. And if I feel like I'm accomplishing something, I feel good about myself. But it's like drugs, like it goes away. It's like unsustainable feeling good about yourself. You just need more and more and more to keep the high going. So that is the crux for actually a lot of the issues that I deal with, like anxiety, burnout, all come back down to that issue. And for those of you who've never met me, sorry, like the informal tagline of Rad Reads is come for the productivity, stay for the existential. So like, to me, you can't actually separate the two items. So that's kind of the starting point. So let's go back to your question of like getting over that. So one thing that has really, really guided me through all of this, and it's a long-term good strategy, business strategy, short-term dangerous strategy, or maybe not unhealthy strategy, is that I'm constantly guided by fun. So if something doesn't feel fun, I'm not going to do it. And that's a really like selfish, that can feel indulgent as a scrappy entrepreneur, because an asshole client that was willing to pay double the rack rate, I would say no. And so being guided by, that's why I'm like saying no tooth and nail to Clubhouse. Like I have enough pools of fun in my life. I need to like stay focused in those pools and not go chase another shiny new toy. And so when you're guided by fun, it actually becomes a lot easier to write a newsletter or create a YouTube video or even to create a course, because there is this element that it's like the joy of the craft. And then the benefit is like, oh, and people might like it. So that's one framing that has helped me, is to be like, is this fun? Is this fun? So for example, I fucking hate Instagram. I'm not on Instagram because it makes me feel so shitty about myself and my life that I just refuse to go on it. And people like ping me and send me messages and they want to like, a funny story about my relationship with Instagram. I only have Instagram on my iPad, and just so like I can occasionally check the messages. And Instagram on the iPad doesn't rotate. So if you use the iPad keyboard, the pictures are actually the wrong way. So like for me to scroll Instagram, I've got to go like this. And so I do it just for the DM. So Instagram, not fun. I took Ali's course on YouTube, and I had some stuff come up in it, but like, I don't find YouTube fun. It's not, I don't watch YouTube. So it's square peg, round hole. I think YouTube's a phenomenal engine. Like I wish that I enjoyed YouTube, because I do think it's one of the most remarkable platforms in the world by a mile. And I could share why I think that, but it's not fun to me. And so I'm just not going to do that. So that's my first like way of combating imposter syndrome, is follow the fun, joy of the craft. You've heard it, process versus destination, outcome, journey versus destination. I really, really do believe that. That's the only way that I could be doing this for 6 straight years.
Yeah, my favorite way to frame that is to be selfish in your creation, where the only way to do anything sustainably is to do something that is self-indulgent. So where no one reads it or no one listens to it or no one watches it, it's still satisfying to you. And you look at the Tim Ferrisses or any just prolific creators who really do
Bless
stuff.
You, Josh.
Right. They would do it if no one else listened. Tim Ferriss would have those same conversations if no one cared, right? And it's the product of that is people sense your authenticity, right?
Totally,
people see, okay, this guy's actually doing things he cares about, and it's easy to kind of pay attention to.
The other thing I would say, I like to tell people, you never want to compete with someone who genuinely cares and who's having fun. Man, I don't want that person to be my competitor.
Yeah, good luck competing with someone who can work 16 hours a day because it feels like play to them.
Yep.
Work to everyone else. So I think, so outside of imposter syndrome, I'm reading through, I've circulated it a little bit with the invite of your conversation with Stu. So Stu is the founder of Compound Writing. It's a writing community that I'm in, and we sent an invite around to ship 30 members yesterday on it. And a lot of the things you talked about in that interview, I think it was funny to listen to, because I'd already internalized them from you when we first met. And I think a lot of the principles of Ship 30 for 30 you talked about in that kind of interview, where you want to ship quickly in the beginning, take advantage that no one's reading. So any thoughts you have on kind of mindset at the beginning for writers on
Yes.
anything you want to share on that?
Yeah. Oh man, it's a great question. So I want to take you back to my first blog post that I ever wrote. It was on medium.com. I'm going to drop it into the links. Actually, if you search Dickie, K and generosity and grit, it will pull up this post. There's like a guy pushing one of those workout things. So this was, I think, sometime in late 2015 that I wrote this. So 5 years ago. And it's like 4,000 words, and it was like 14 lessons of Khe leaving, Wall Street, that he's going to take into this next chapter of his life. And I spent 6 weeks writing it. I had a friend edit it. I found some good graphics, and I drew my own graphics, Tim Urban style. And then I posted it on Medium. I probably had like 400 Medium followers. And I think it was before the claps where you could hold your finger down on the claps. So I think I got like 3 thumbs up and maybe 48 views. So I felt like shit. And then right after that, I started emailing all of my friends being like, hey, did you read my post? Did you read my post? Can you share my post? And I'm so embarrassed that I did that, because I happen to be on the receiving end of a lot of that now, basically begging people to read my post. And they didn't share it, they didn't read it, whatever. And so from that point on, I think I actually did my own personal version of Ship 30 for 30. I then decided I'm going to write for an hour every day for 30 minutes on Medium. And I wrote these like small little posts. And that is really when that writing muscle started to take off. And so I had been doing regular writing through my email newsletter. So that was like training me to blurb pieces. But I hadn't been doing it with individual blog pieces, because I hadn't thought about the framing and the headlines and all that. And just to show you like how one of those posts had like a 1-word headline, like trust or something. And it was like a worse headline known to mankind. Never, ever, ever use a 1-word headline unless you're Ta-Nehisi Coates or something. So anyway, I then got into that mindset of shipping and publishing regularly. I probably write 2 to 3 blog posts a week still. Some of you are in my marketing sequence for my course launch right now. I'm writing 2,000-word sales, like marketing emails, like each day for every day for like 4 days now. And so you got to just train that muscle to ship more frequently, because a few things happen. One, it just gets easier, right? So if you write 1 blog post every 6 weeks or 3 blog posts every week, right? Think about just the sheer practice and reps. So that's one thing. The second thing is that you get really quick feedback loops. So you just get to see, like, I'm not an analytics geek, but I look at things like how many people open my email. So when I send the same email, same time over and over and over, when the open rates fluctuate, I know it's the headline, unless it may be some exogenous factor like holidays or COVID or something. So you get these quick responses. I do little things like pay attention to what links people click. So like, for example, these 2,000-word sales pages, the buy button's literally the last line of the email. It's the only link. So to me, I'm measuring, I'm like, how many people clicked that link? They read 2,000 words or skimmed 2,000 words to get there. So you get these little, and then you get people talking on social, email newsletters, people respond back to me a lot. And so you just get this pulse, like you really start to feel the pulse. Like, are people vibing with this? That's how I came up with the 10K framework. I've been like fucking with some version of the Eisenhower matrix for many years. And like, that thing's too old. It's long in the tooth and all that. And I'm just like trying to get because I wanted some matrix. And then I did this 10K thing, and then there's like boom, boom, boom. They're like, this is great. This is great. People started telling me how they were like organizing their tasks that way. And then I'm like, shit, like maybe I should like turn this into a book, like seek out a publisher. But again, it was that like rapid feedback loop. The third thing that people don't tell you when you ship oftenly is you end up rewriting the same post many times. And that's totally okay. That's totally okay because it gets better each time. These long sales pages that I'm writing are like mashups of old posts that I wrote in the past year. And like no one cares. Like the few people that can notice don't care because it's kind of part of the bigger story. There's a huge advantage because the message keeps getting tighter and tighter as we go along, and it saves me time. Right? I literally yesterday in part of the email, I went in and just took like 2 paragraphs from an old post, put it in, wordsmithed it a little bit to like fit the narrative, and then gone on with it. And it also helps fight your imposter syndrome because like you just like it is the ultimate process first outcome, right? Instead of like trying to run a 4-hour marathon, you're just running 7 miles every day, right? It's something you can control.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that of Ship 30 being get your writing habit and build a foundation of future content, right? So we have 30 days of essays. That is not the last time that those essays are going to see the light of world, right? It turns into a remixing exercise. And I'm a year into this, finally starting to see like, oh, I've written about this. I can almost take this exact post and move it into here. And the compounding effect of just once the fact that writing doesn't go away. Once it's out there, it's there forever, and the ability to repurpose that, I think, is underrated as you start to do this more.
The other thing, Dickie, you might have been going towards this, but I think this is a point. There's a few things that I wish I had learned much earlier in my writing career, and so I want to share them with you so that you don't have to wait 6 years to figure them out. One, headlines matter. Write 5 to 10 to 15 headlines for every post that you write. And it's a muscle that you have to develop. And then again, when you ship, you'll start to get a little pulse. So headlines matter. That would be the first thing. The second thing is that framing matters, right? So you could be really intrigued by like the Eisenhower matrix, right? Like, cool, that's a useful concept. But you need to frame it in a way that will emotionally connect with people. So what I used to do is I'm like, I found this really cool thing. It's called the Eisenhower matrix. No, like you need to empathize with the reader to be like, why should they care about the Eisenhower matrix? So like facts don't sell, stories sell, right? So like creating that link. So that would be the second one, and the third one would be really understanding, and I talked about this with Stu, is really being in tune with the zeitgeist. So I want you actually to drop into the chat in your world, whatever that is, your Twitter world, your friends, like what is the current zeitgeist of the moment? And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term zeitgeist, it's like, what are people talking about today? Boom, GameStop. I was thinking this morning, and I'm like, to me, this whole thing is a little bit like Clubhouse. Like, I just don't want to go down the rabbit hole. But I was like, how can I peg a story to GameStop? And it almost doesn't matter. The story could actually be why I don't want to write about GameStop, right? But if you can peg to the zeitgeist, people are going to read it because that's the zeitgeist. People care about it. So always think about I'm seeing like climate change and when COVID's done, I think those are a little too broad. Like the zeitgeist is almost like you can touch it, right? And maybe it's something like a little more specific. Like in LA right now, one of the things that everyone's talking about is that you can go, there's like a standby line for vaccines. So like they throw them out. There's this whole controversy about like, do you throw them out or not? Then you go in and so that would be an angle to talk about when COVID, it's a more specific angle to talk about when COVID ends, which is like how people might be gaming, whatever, the vaccine. So So that's same with climate change. Like Greta Thunberg's tweet at Donald Trump. That might be the hook into climate change when she's like, seems like he's gonna, have a happy life, this merry old man or whatever. So try to find into something very specific, and especially if your audience is very internety, you can actually like put the tweet in, put the video in, because that hooks it to that thing. The Elon Musk GameStop stock tweet can be a hook into your story. Good question about timeless versus timely content. This is where the rewriting part comes in. This is a strategy that I use. So the iterative content tends to be much more like almost like a Twitter feed, quick consumption. Like you see it in the email and the feed and all that. If you don't catch it, then you might see it here and there. It might be linked a few times, but then it's kind of gone, right? I think I've written like 250 blog posts, and 8 of them drive 99% of the traffic on my website. What I'll do though then is the ones that hit, then you turn it into evergreen content. Then you blow it out into a 4,000 word piece with graphics, with SEO, whatever the things that make it that you're proud of. But don't do that until you know that people care about the idea, right? And so that's how I would approach the like timeless versus timely content. And I think this evergreen content, iterative content into SEO is a very powerful lens, because if you just understand a little bit about how SEO works, you could see like the social validation. And if you can just check that there's like some SEO room to play with, like it's the keyword has some juice to it, then you put those two together, and then you rope in all the other stuff, graphics, storytelling, headline, all that, joint ventures like cross promotion, and then kind of blow it all out together that way.
I think it's the trade-off of having your core ideas and finding ways to say them in 50 different ways, and that is when you weave in the narrative, right? You have the 10K idea. How do you loop that in? So it's not as much evergreen versus, it's like timely, using the timely content to plug your timeless content.
Exactly. Yeah. Your core ideas. My writing coach, Billy Bross, calls it chain of beliefs, right? Like what do you stand for?
Yeah. I like that a lot. Another question I want to follow up with from Stu's interview was talking about your creative constraints. And part of Ship 30 is from day zero, there's a creative constraint. You have to put an essay on this one screenshot. The goal is to ship it under 30 to 45 minutes. And we kind of brought those. So I'd love to hear your process and thoughts around creative forcing functions and constraints.
Yeah. So like everyone, I work well with deadlines. So I send a newsletter at roughly at 9 a.m. Ideally Eastern, but it slips to Pacific, at 9 a.m. on Thursday and Saturday. And in both of those emails, I try to write at least a 800 word piece. And so it's not that part's not the constraint. That part's the forcing function. That's like, you're just fucking writing nonstop. That being said, I do, so for the Saturday email, which tends to be a little bit more free and like less, like more creative, I basically don't start writing it till Saturday morning. And so I'll wake up at like 5:30, 6, and spend, an hour writing it. I've got the ideas. I've got the headline, actually. I work on the headline throughout the week. But I've got the kind of like gist of what I want to say. Oftentimes it's pegged to the zeitgeist. Sometimes it's just like little notes. Like this one that I've had in my head for a long time is, my daughter listens to a lot of Ariana Grande. And so one of the lines that she has is happiness is a pair of red bottoms. And so I've just had that quote in my head, and I'm like, that's a good subject line. And again, I write a lot about how material goods can't bring you happiness. It's a perfect peg into, one of my timeless ideas. And that song's quite old, but still it has this cultural feel to it. So those are the constraints that I use. Parkinson's law, space expands to fill the time, or matter expands to fill the space allotted to it, is very real. So oftentimes I just don't let myself even start on it, but I will do these things like think about the headlines, because those are the headline actually just takes, it's a little bit like a felt sense, right? Like, copywriters talk often about how they write longhand just to see how the words look on the page. I know that when I worked at Quartz, one of the editors, like even if we were meeting, she would, as I was pitching headlines to her, she would type them all into Slack because she wanted to like see how they looked, not like how she heard them. So I would say those are the constraints that I apply.
So if we were to look right now, are you working on multiple pieces at once, or you have this kind of, I guess I'm curious about your workflow and how that ties into, both the product side and just keeping up with your audience. Like, do you send every email to your entire email list? How does that work?
Yeah. So let's see, what's the best way to answer that? So originally, I mean, what you're gonna hear me kind of talk through is kind of like the business that I like, the meandering business that I'm building, right? So originally it started as a Saturday email on Rad Reads. Like, it was curated links. That was curated links for like 2 years. Then I added an essay to the top, and that was the Saturday email for quite a long time. Then about 2 to 3 years, 2 years ago, when I really kind of got into Notion, I started getting all these folks coming in through my Notion content, where the other one was more just like, we think Khe is an interesting guy. And there's a bunch of Rad readers here, so it would be funny to hear how they actually perceive it. Because again, like, it could be what I think could be very different than what the reality is. And so there was all these like Notion people coming in. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll do a Notion newsletter on Thursday, and then this more like kind of OG newsletter on Saturday. And so I did a Notion newsletter, but the problem is I realized quite quickly that I didn't want to write about Notion every week. But Thursday kind of turned into this more like existential productivity lens of the world, and with like an emphasis on Notion, but it really is about like time management, system designs, like things like that. It's more pragmatic. And Saturday was just like whatever I felt like writing about. And I actually don't love that approach, because it is a little bit fragmented to the reader, because some people only got Saturday for a while and some people only got Thursday, and that's kind of stupid also. And I don't want to create two different brands under myself. So they're kind of just all merging into one now. And to be honest, I think this will be the last year that I write 2 essays a week. I think it's pretty exhausting. And I don't think I need to anymore. I think that I needed to, I mean, who decides what you need? But I think that in the early days, writing 2 essays was $1,000 or $10,000 work, but now it's getting pushed down to like $100 work in some instances, where I would actually be much better off, like maybe trying to get a book deal, or maybe trying to do these types of talks like more frequently, or maybe like looking into Clubhouse, like maybe again, like so I think about that trade-off.
Yeah, I want to dig into the 10K framework at the end, but 2 questions I have before we open it up for Q&A. But that was, the first one is, what do you think is some advice that you've received, or what is commonly given to writers early on, that you think is incorrect or you disagree with? And then I'll let you think about that one, or this one, which is something that you've personally changed your mind on with regards to writing or publishing. So I'll give you, I know those are both a little harder.
Yeah, those are, okay. So the second one, something, let's see, something. Okay. I mean, it's going to sound stupid, but distribution matters. Look at, I mean, the classic example for why distribution matters is Bill Simmons. The guy is like one of the most talented folks out there. And he went on, if anyone had a chance of making it on his own without, massive distribution, it would be him. So distribution, I hate that this is true, but distribution, I wouldn't say distribution matters more than talent, but talent without distribution is wasted. And for someone like me who is very much like my actions speak for myself, my, like Protestant work ethic-y, like, I only have the sweat off my back to prove myself. Like, I'm just like, it's kind of like, it's a little defeating. It feels defeating to be like, no, and you need this other thing, right? And so it made me at first I was just like, why the fuck would anyone ever hire a PR firm? And now I'm like, I should hire a PR person, right? Because the distribution matters, right? And so I think I was naive to that. And really, Bill Simmons not succeeding on The Ringer, not succeeding, made that crystal clear to me that if he couldn't do it, then they're like, we can't do it, or it's much harder. Again, it depends on what matters. Advice. Okay.
So well, if you want to think about that one, I'll follow up on it.
I got one.
Oh, good. Go for it.
I think that a lot of people say that you should be first, like when there's a new social network, there's a benefit to being first or being early. So like the early Clubhouse people or the early YouTubers and all that. I think that you're better off finding the thing that you're good at and just getting so damn good at that one. Over the long run, I think that that's much more sustainable. Which is why I couldn't get into Instagram. I tried so freaking hard. And why I'm really just, I actually think voice lends itself well to me, but I'm just like, no, like writing works for me. I know how to do it. It's fun. It's gotten a lot easier. Just like keep doing that. So that might be one. And I'm sure someone would disagree. And Josh is making dinner and looks delicious.
Mm-hmm. The distribution side is something I have changed my mind on as well, where I kind of got in when I started writing, it was like, oh, I'm writing every post on my blog. And it was actually when I started talking to Cole, who's in the room, he basically said, it's almost like people pay more attention to things that I put on my blog now because I've gained attention on Twitter, where if you write into the void, no, it's harder to stumble across someone's blog and say, you need more context about that person. And then you're introduced to their ideas and there becomes a little bit of confirmation bias, where if you have a positive outlook on someone from some social media platform or distribution system, you then see the ideas that they've shared on their personal home and say, oh, I like that too. Right? Because you start to think that everything they do, you agree with. So I kind of I've changed my mind on the distribution side as well, because if you aren't building a reputation via these platforms, you're just gonna struggle on your own website.
I totally agree with you. I think it's even simpler than that. It's just leverage. Right. Like I went on Ali Abdal's YouTube and did a GTD presentation like a year ago. I think just off of that, I generated $20,000 of course sales. Like that's so hard to do on my own.
Yeah.
right? There was another a gentleman. He's not even that vocal. His name's Ozan Varol. He's a very good writer. I went on his podcast. I think he has like 15,000 followers. He's not even on Twitter. He doesn't have a Twitter account. I went on his podcast, and the next day I had 700 new email subscribers.
Wow.
So, but Ariana Huffington retweeted me once, and I got 5 new subscribers. She has 5 million. They're probably half of them are fake. But again, so it's like distribution aligned with what that thing you're saying, where it's just like that validation is so powerful. So like now I spend, like, I pitch reporters because I got quoted in the journal the other day. Subscriptions went through the roof, and I got the journal backlink, but I had to pitch the reporter, right? And really work the relationship. That's what PR does.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, of the leverage side. It's like a lot of that work has been done for you.
Yeah.
Right. And otherwise you're just kind of fighting up a hill and getting out of your core strength, which is writing, right? The more time you spend on distribution, the worse your writing is going to be. And so to the extent that you can, I like to say, hire an army of robots to distribute your ideas for free, or whatever it is, someone has already built their audience, right? That's just going to make your life 10 times easier.
Totally.
All right, let's open it up to questions in the chat.
There
Cole
too
asked,
in the chat, yeah.
Nice. How do you think about repeating topics for new subscribers?
I think that, again, if you've got a different framing, right, you could write about the relationship between happiness and money, and you could enter it through an Ariana Grande hook, or through a Daniel Kahneman study, or through a personal anecdote. Again, I think the thing, Cole, to realize is that people read so much stuff that, like, they don't, first of all, they probably didn't read the thing that you're worried about them rereading. Second of all, if they did, they don't remember. Third of all, if they did remember, they're probably keen to see your new take, and don't sell yourself short, right? If you write that same post 3 times, you will have grown as a writer. You will have new experiences. You will have new ways to describe the concept. Your language will be better. So the experience will be better anyway. So I don't think it matters at all.
Cool.
Especially if you're known for like a set of ideas.
Nice. William asked, what's your system for generating, saving, and retrieving ideas?
Oh,
so this gets into your GTD and 10K framework.
Yeah, well, this is where I'll commit heresy and say that actually I don't take a lot of notes. I don't use Readwise. I fucked with Rome for a minute, but I realized I don't use block link references are incredibly powerful. They just didn't make me a better writer. And so my system for writing is actually really, really simple. When I have an idea, I put it in a Notion document, and I have 2 views. It basically has a star system, like 1 through 5, or sort by last modified by created date. So like the most recent idea will come to the top. So I toggle towards the 2 views, and the idea would be like this Ariana Grande quote. It would just say that. But here's the thing. I don't think I opened that file once last year. And I wrote over 100 posts. The thing is, when you iterate, when you write so frequently, everything, I could write 8 different blog posts about the conversation that we're having today. I could come at it from all these different angles. I could talk about, running into running into the hallways of Twitter, right? That's like a good story. The hallways of Twitter, right? And so this is where I kind of, I challenge, I really, really, in my course, focus people on shiny new toy syndrome, right? Which is like a tool, a system, or something that's going to like buy you salvation from the thing that you find difficult. And in this case, it might be imposter syndrome, or just writing, or the courage to write. And I think that a lot of this like note-taking kind of obsession is actually escapism to hitting publish on the damn page. And so I would say, so I used to do all that. I used to do progressive summarization and use Rome and all that. But what I realized two things. Anytime I wanted to look something up, the most incredible tool to find the thing that I wanted to find is Google, right? Adam Grant quote on leadership, boom. Goodreads quote, self-sufficiency, boom. Like, you don't have to tag that shit. Like, Google will find it for you. And your brain is actually quite good at remembering where you saw that, right? You know, Dickie Bush quote, you know, on, you know, blah, 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 right? So that would be one thing. And the second thing is, when you ship so frequently, I actually Google my own articles all the time. That's my second brain. Our posts that I've published, they're getting no traffic because they were really meant to be emails. Sure, like occasionally someone might stumble on them through a link or whatever, but they're really like just on Google. I probably should like de-index them or something, but I just Google. But I remember, because I wrote it down, I remember the keyword to jog my memory, go in. I might even grab the fucking paragraph and use that, link to it, call it a day. So, I don't, it is a boss move, William, but it's not a flex. It's just like, I just wrote so many things that no one else is Googling them. I guess I'll tell you, just me, right? Like, and you know, we stripped my IP from our Google Analytics, so I'm not even getting the traffic count from my own Googles. So that's kind of the way that I would, the caution I have for all of you, because I've seen it a lot. And this is not like, Tiago's a good friend, Nat, they're all good friends of mine. They're prolific creators. Dave Perel, we're all friends. It's not a knock on that, but I would challenge you to say, is my note-taking a form of escapism?
I think it's what you preach to me is why. Why are you switching note-taking systems? Why are you having an intentional reason, saying, here is the limiting factor of what I'm using. This is why I am switching, versus this, I can't define exactly what it's going to do for me, but I know it's going to make it better. Mm-hmm. Right? That's kind of the trap I think we fall into. And I fall into it all the time. I'm playing around right now with transitioning into Rome to write, just because I like the idea of compound interest on your notes. Mm-hmm. And I get overwhelmed with trying to build it all up at once. And it's the why is I want the long-term compounding. So that means moving over one or two notes just in time, right? Mm-hmm. Not getting ahead of myself. That's where I always struggle.
Yeah. But I would say the ultimate compounding is what your course teaches, shipping. Right? That's the brass tacks, right? That's where you get the feedback. You know, you don't get the feedback loop on the note you made for yourself in Rome, right? I said this on Stu's example, right? People might, Soul, right? I was on vacation during that time, but man, talk about a zeitgeist. Literally, like, everyone watched the same movie the same day. Anyone write a post about it the next day, and it was it was a movie about life. So like, you could literally enter any conversation. There was the hedge fund manager running around being like, is this my life? Like, you could anchor it to that, all the existential stuff. I saw some people talk about it through the lens of race and systemic race, whatever. It was there, that window. If you see a post on Soul in your feed today, I'm not reading that. It doesn't mean it's bad. You just missed the moment.
Yeah, right. Oh, so many ways I want to go on that one, but we'll keep on to the next question. What is hold on, where to go? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, Austin has a good question, and I'd love to hear your answer on this one. I define my self-worth from what I accomplish. How do you manage this? How do you prioritize the projects you work on? So I think this gets into the meat of the 10K, which I'm very interested in.
Wow. I define my self-worth. How do you manage this? Poorly. I guess, I mean, I constantly come back to like, why am I doing this? Right? Like, I actually, for the course, Chris, you're going to see this. I asked myself, there's a Toyota 5 Whys. Oops, let me type it in. Text expander, baby. Toyota 5 Whys, which is like you have something like, I love teaching, or I teach supercharge your productivity. And then you ask yourself, why do I do it 5 times? And I'll never forget, we were doing this goal setting workshop on Rad Reads in the 10K Institute. And the person was like, he sent me this very moving email because his goal was to make 2,000 a month in passive income through like Shopify or some kind of digital entrepreneurship. And he had never actually asked himself why he wanted that. So, he went down, he's like, because I want to be free from the corporate world. And he's like, I would like to have more time. And it was like, well, why do you want more time? And I forget the different steps, but where he landed at the end was he basically wanted more time because he didn't know himself. He was like, I don't know who I am. Right. And so whether it's my course, your course, a blog post, like if the thing that you actually want is to know yourself better, well, A, we should know that. And B, then it will make sense. You're like, okay, well, writing is a creative outlet for me, or it's a way of generating income. But once we muddy the water, and it's like, writing is a thing that I find fun, and it makes me income, and it helps me know who I am and what I stand for. That's when all these things just get so intertwined, and you don't even know why you're doing the thing. You forget. Right? I see this all the time with parents. Parents are like, I want to be more productive so I could spend more time with my kids. I want to, but when they're with their kids, they're on their phone, right? Or they like raise their hand to travel because they want to get promoted. It's like, okay, it's cool if you want to get promoted, but don't say you want to get promoted under the pretense of being a better parent for your kids. You're actually, you're punking yourself. And I think we do that all the time, right? Like especially now that the line between fun and hobbies and income has become so blurred. And I'm like exhibit, A through Z on that. And I'm actually trying to like disentangle a lot of this right now. But we do ourselves this disservice where we're like, the thing that I do must be fun, must bring my life meaning, must make me a better parent, must be playful, and must be the way I express myself creatively. It was like, maybe, but like really try to play with that. And like, do you need to get all these things from one soul wellspring? Right. And so I would I forget who asked the question, Austin's question, just like really understanding the why behind. You might actually surprise yourself. This is why coaching is getting coached is so good, because the coach is like, why do you want that thing? And they don't let you just be like, because it makes me happy. Like, they're like, what's your definition of happiness? You're like, having more followers than my college roommate. Like you get to that point really quickly, and you're like, oh, that center doesn't hold. And it's really hard to do by yourself, because we can just punk ourselves all day. We're so clever at just being like, oh, you like that because it brings your life meaning. You're like, no, it brings you fucking money. That's why you like that. Just be honest with yourself.
So double clicking on the being honest with yourself, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Just so one or two more questions here before we wrap up. What is your process for doing that reflection? Is it a journal? Is it you write to yourself? Is it working with a coach? I'm very curious to hear that.
Yeah. So I've worked with a lot of coaches. I've probably spent over the past like 6 years, I've probably spent like $80,000 that I didn't have on coaching. And it's the best investment ever. So just, I give you right now, Connie is my wife's coach for breath work because I have a lot of anxiety. And that's had some follow-on health effects that I need to work on. So that's Connie's my breath coach. I've been working with a gentleman named Andrew Taggart, who's a practical philosopher, where we philosophize about like what is wisdom, what is happiness, and we spend like 2 to 3 hours talking about that. It's almost like a private philosophy, like Socratic discourse. And I'm a computer science, I'm a numbers guy. Philosophy is not my thing. But I've been working with him for 3 years, 3 hours a month for 3 years. I have like a bunch of copywriting coaches, business strategy coach that he's just like, list 100 products that you want to build and let's cross out 98 of them, right? That's really hard exercise to do by yourself. So I would say coaching is a big one. And through that coaching, I coach others as well. I actually just shut that down, but I coach others as well. Now I'm just showing off my my text expansion skills. So I've coached a lot of people. So I'm used to like that 5 whys. I'm just like, really? Is that really why you're doing this, Khe? Really? And so I've developed a little bit of that muscle memory to kind of gut check myself. And then I think the third one is related to coaching. Is a lot of this stuff's driven by deep insecurities or longly held fears. And when I really think back to the ones to the ones that I have, is that I want to be loved, and I'm scared of being unloved. And so when I'm editing and re-editing an email, looking for typos, like if one person is like, that doesn't make sense. It goes right to that part in my heart that's like scared of being unloved, even though it's some faceless internet troll. I'm just like, I'm unloved by a faceless internet troll, and that really hurts, and it's really scary. And so I didn't know that about myself. It took years of talking about this desire to be loved. A lot of it was because I was a fucking huge dork, and no woman would give me the time of day for my entire, until I was like 20. Right. And so much of it is the emotional residue that comes from that, even though I have an incredible and gorgeous wife and all of that stuff, that residue doesn't go away. I don't like to use the word trauma because it can mean so many things to so many different people, but we all have these types of traumas, right? Trauma is not just being abused or being bullied. It is, there's micro traumas of like people not seeing you, people not hearing you, people not making you feel loved. And so much of my career, I didn't realize, it probably took me until my midlife crisis at 35 to realize that so much of my career, and it still is, driven by those yearnings that I had as a teenager, as a kid. And, this is all right. Like when you get to the why, it's like, I just want to be loved, right? Like, why do you do a Notion course? I just want to be loved. Like, I just want people to think I'm a good person, right? And so I've created all of these sets of behaviors, consistency, friendliness, generosity, like all that. And look, they're inherently good behaviors themselves, but they're there because a deep part of me wants to feel loved and to be known, to know that I am a good person, right? But if I didn't do all of those things, would I be unloved and be a bad person? Like, probably not, but that's the tension that you have to explore with yourself. Sorry, everyone. Come for the productivity, stay for the existential.
I think that's exactly the perfect spot to end, because it's all a trade-off. Everything we do is some kind of trade-off between why we are justifying it to ourselves versus what we really should be doing. So Kay, I feel like we could go on for hours, but I want to make sure everyone knows where to get more of your stuff, get more of this existential reckoning with productivity advice.
So yeah, head over to radreads.co. Stupid, that should be a link. And that is that's sign up for the newsletter. I'm super active on Twitter. And Chris and Josh could tell you about the course where, in the early days, it was about productivity. But every iteration, it's like in the first class, like you're going to have to do the 5, like, why did you take this course? The 5 whys, not the 1 why. And if you're up for it, share it with the other 100 students.
Yes.
Right. And so for those of you who are interested, it is a methodology on prioritization. I mean, that's the gateway drug, but it really is one on getting to know like who you are, what you stand for, why you do the things you do. And then once you know that about yourself and you harness that, then you can like make your dreams, like that becomes the rocket fuel behind, living that intentional life that we all know we have in us.
Awesome. So we're going to distribute notes to this conversation. We'll be sure to link to all that. I have been a subscriber of Kay's newsletter since a year ago, almost today, and have enjoyed every step of the way. So Kay, I appreciate you taking the time. I think everyone's got a lot of 5 whys to ask tonight, right? I know I do. So I appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Dickie, yeah, thank you, man. You're a force of nature, man. I saw those Twitter statistics the other day. It was like 5,800 followers. It took me a decade to get 10,000 followers. So whatever you're doing, it works. But most importantly, bringing together like-minded, interesting, kind people who can support each other and grow from each other. That's probably when you land on some of your nested whys. That's probably one of the things that motivates you. So keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, I appreciate it. And everyone else, have a great rest of the day. And we'll see you tomorrow for an office hours with Stu. And make sure I'll send around this conversation between Stu and Kay so you can get a glimpse of that one as well.
Awesome.
Guys, have a great rest of the day. See you soon. Yep.
Thanks.